Welcome, everybody. All right, I'm gonna wait just one more moment until everybody trickles in. All right, well, welcome to today's webinar. This is a very exciting one. Just want to go briefly over some housekeeping. This is in a meeting format, which means that you're more than welcome to use the chat feature to chat with each other and with the moderators. Please do know that everybody will be able to see your names, and you can also use the Q&A button if you specifically would like to ask a question. If you use the Q&A button, that means you can also ask the question anonymously. What you can do also is at the end, we will have some time for questions and answers. If you need closed captions on the bottom toolbar, you can go ahead and activate closed captions as well. And this webinar is recorded, so the recording will be available hopefully by the end of today. That you can share or watch again. And without any further ado, I would like to hand it off to Sarah. Thanks, Sarah.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Mirror Mirror, Navigating Physical Appearance in Higher Education, our webinar for today. That's being co-hosted by ACRA's Women's Caucus and the Black Caucus. So we're very happy to be able to work together and bring you this content today. My name is Sarah Kessler. I'm the Associate Registrar at the University of Georgia and also the Chair of the Women's Caucus. So we really appreciate you being here. And I just wanted to give you a little bit of very brief background information about the Women's Caucus that was founded in 2018 as a professional development opportunity, of way of networking and building issues with discussing issues. And it's open to members who are very interested in promoting scholarship, empowering and developing all women within the higher ed community. So if you're not a member yet of the Women's Caucus and you find this content to be useful today, please consider joining the Women's Caucus. I'll post the link in there. And so now I'm just going to hand it over to Dr. Gwendolyn Davis, who can give you a little bit more information from the other co-hosting side of the house.
And hello, everyone. Thank you again for joining us today. Just something quick about Black Caucus. Just like with the Women's Caucus, the Black Caucus is a membership that's open to all ACRO members who are interested in advancing the Black community by facilitating community building, the exchange of ideas, information addressing critical issues, and promoting leadership development. The Black Caucus is one of the largest caucuses with ACRO and has a pretty long history being a caucus here with ACRO. So we, of course, support professional development, networking, and again, the discussions around anything that's advancing the Black community. So again, we'll drop a link in the chat for anyone who is interested in joining Black Caucus. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Melissa so we will get started. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Melissa Manuel, and I am the University Registrar at NEOM in Saudi Arabia, co-chair of professional development for the ACRO Women's Caucus, and PhD student with research focusing on organizational behavior. So this is definitely a topic that is really interesting to me. I am so lucky that I had the privilege to attend Dr. Obidike's doctoral defense in June of this year, and it was absolutely inspiring. And I'm so excited that she is joining us here today for a jointly hosted webinar from both the Black Caucus and the Women's Caucus. So Uzoma Obidike, now PhD, is a clinical experiences and internship manager at National Louis University. She is also a career transition coach and founder of She Leads Beautifully, where she teaches women in stagnant careers how to tap into their networks to access dream career opportunities. Dr. Obidike is a contributing author of No Ways Tired, The Journey for Professionals of Color in Student Affairs. She has graced local and national stages leading career and leadership development talks. Dr. Obidike was the 2019 recipient of the Up and Coming Women in Education for the Influential Women of Northwest Indiana Awards. And without further ado, I would like to hand it over to Dr. Obidike.
Hey, thank you, future Dr. Manuel. I am so pleased to be here. Thank you all for attending our webinar this afternoon. So just wanted to first start off that the images that I'm going to be sharing here are all stock images. No one from my research, their images and their identities have been protected. Excuse me. So for today's overview, I'm going to cover these 4 areas. The first one is the inspiration to my topic for my dissertation, the overview of the actual dissertation, just brief recommendations I'll share for higher education leaders for the institutions, and then I'll spend more time sharing the recommendations for Black women in entry-level to mid-level education roles. My inspiration for this topic initially started just through conversations with people who I already had in my life. One of my best friends, who is a late friend of mine, she used to work in sales as an account manager. And one time I went to meet her, down in Indianapolis when I was working at a previous institution. I would go downstate. And so we had dinner. I was just regular outfit. To me, it was just nothing that stood out too much. And she came in the room and she was all dolled up in a really nice outfit. And I was like, "Where are you going, friend?" And she said, "Well, I work in sales. And so image is everything, in our field." And so having that conversation, and I've heard it in other places too, but just to see it, and she was always fabulous anyway, but in that conversation and correlating it to the type of job that she had being the face of the organization, it was really important and that stuck with me. Another conversation I had was with another peer who worked at a different university where I was at, and she worked in the admissions office. And I remember seeing her together with some of her peers, and I said, "Wow, all of you all have this like model type of appearance, the 1990s model, thin, tall, attractive according to the European standards of beauty that we have here in the United States." And she's like, "Well, of course, we work in admissions. We are the face of the institution. And so we are attracting students that come here." And she didn't say it as though that's why they were hired, or maybe something that they were doing subconsciously or consciously to dress a certain way or show up a certain way because they were representing the institution. I've done that too. There are times where I do a presentation and I go all out and say, "I'm going to dress up. I'm going to do a certain, wear a blazer on this day, wearing something extra when you're going to work, when you're meeting with certain people, right?" And so where does that come from? And so I had to sit down and think about that and wonder, is it something that was written on paper? Was it something that I learned from my family? Was it something that I observed from peers? And so just through these conversations that I was having with people, I began to realize, like, it's not just me that's experiencing it. We're seeing it in many different institutions and career industries. And then the one that stood out to me the most was actually through a conversation with a colleague who was hiring for a position that needed a director role. And the person who had been serving as interim for a number of years did not get that role. And I asked the person a question and said, "Well, why didn't you hire this person? They have been filling this seat for so long." And the response was, "Well, they don't have the look of the director." And that right there was like, whoa, And oddly enough, or surprisingly enough, the person was not a Black woman. But regardless, it led me to see that there were these unwritten rules, unwritten standards about what organizations, the people leading them, are looking for when it comes to someone who is representing their brand. And so that's what really led to me starting or wanting to go into this topic and focus it more on higher education. So an employee's appearance is a reflection of a company or an employer's brand. Now we think about from birth, right? Especially now in 2023, we're seeing a ton of gender reveals. We see, is it going to be a boy? It's blue. Is it going to be a girl? It's pink. So right from birth, we're already putting out these expectations of what it means to identify as a boy or as a girl growing up. And as we get older through school, maybe in our teen years, puberty, we start thinking about makeup and wanting to look a certain way because we see that from our moms or aunties or big cousins or sisters. You might see it on TV. When I was growing up, I saw it in magazines, right? And so these are the things that the images that are put out there that become the influences for how we show up in our everyday and as well in the workplace. How we wear our hair. I intentionally wore my natural hair today because of this topic, but in a normal day, I've got extensions in my hair. I might be wearing a wig. I might be wearing something else to um, give my hair some length. Why is that? That's because that's how I grew up. I was always around extensions. We wore braids growing up in school. Never was wearing natural hair something that was bragged about, that we were proud of. It was more of, let's straighten it. Yes, my mom, when she had her hair in the 70s, she had her fro, but I grew up in the 90s. And so those are the years that I experienced the relaxers and straightening your hair and how that was more beautiful. And so you think about how we dress, what we wear, same idea from our families, from our peers, what we see on the media, okay? And even about weight. So our body type, our size, as a woman of color, there's always conversations about, what can we wear to work? I've always been the kind of person where I want to hide my hips and my butt because I feel sometimes it's showing too much. But where does that come from? There's this hypersexualization of Black women's bodies that have been in the culture that I've grown up with. And so I know others have experienced it because we've had conversations about it. And I'm seeing it now more through now doing this research. It's something that I wanted to explore further. Black women face unique challenges in the workplace, including racism, sexism, and other forms of oppression. These challenges can be compounded by the pressure to conform to Eurocentric beauty standards. So in my research, the problem is there are discriminatory dress codes, excuse me, this is blocking my view here a second. There are discriminatory dress code standards towards Black women, particularly their hair. Black women are systemically pitted against dominant cultural standards of beauty and attractiveness. And there is a lack of research on this topic as it pertains to senior level Black women higher education administrators. And so, like I said, a lot of the conversations that I was having were in the workplace. And I've been working in higher ed now, gosh, well over 15 plus years. And I have never seen an actual dress code that talked about what you can and cannot wear. But there was always a sense of, well, we can't wear that or you shouldn't wear this. The purpose of my study was to examine how conforming pressures related to physical appearance influence the career experiences of senior level Black women administrators in higher education. I originally wanted to focus more on their career advancement, but due to the nature of this study, I wasn't able to pull that kind of information, mainly because the women I interviewed did not know if how they presented themselves had anything to do with their advancement. They can only assume, but there was not confirmed. So I switched it over to overall their career experiences. So I looked at their early career, mid-career, and then where they are now at the senior level. And so the significance of this study is to serve as a tool of reference for Black women as they enter into or advance into senior leadership positions at predominantly white institutions of higher education, other types of institutions of higher education as well, but I really wanted to focus on spaces where the Black woman is not centered or is not prevalent. Also to serve as a tool for hiring managers to help them be aware of any explicit or implicit bias that they may have relating to appearance-based stereotypes attached to Black women. And so just keeping that at the forefront of everything that they do so as not to exclude anyone or to make everyone not feel as though their identity is not welcome. The sole research question is, what is the role of conforming pressures of physical appearance on the career experiences of senior level Black women administrators in higher education? So I'll quickly go through my methodology, won't go through all of this, but I chose to use a qualitative phenomenological, which means that I focus on having interviews with women who are in senior leadership roles. I wanted to hear the true essence of their stories. And so that following them again from the beginning of their career to where they are now and really pulling the themes from those experiences. I was the researcher, so I am the, was the instrument and able to pull out and create codes from those themes. I found them just through direct outreach, people who I may have known about, research. Originally, I was looking for university presidents. That was actually harder than I thought to get on their calendars. So I was able to look at and work with, I had one president, one interim president. I had, vice presidents of student affairs. I had an assistant dean of students, chief diversity officers. So I was able to work with 7 women who were at that senior leadership level. And I had meetings via Zoom just like this, asked them semi-structured interview questions to ask about their experiences throughout their career. Okay. Then I had a framework, which was the social identity-based impression management system by Roberts. The framework that focused really on kind of a combination of identity, social identity theory, as well as impression management, and really how women think about wanting to conform to whatever situation that they're currently in, but also wanting to only showcase what they want others to see. So if you think about things like code switching in the workplace, where maybe at home you might wear your natural hair, but at work you might not, for an interview, for example, I've had clients say, hey, do you think I should wear my natural hair for an interview, or maybe I should straighten it, and then when I get the job, I can show my hair. So there's a combination of that and showing the journey that the women are facing in the workplace on how they navigate that, right? And so I had 9 themes that came from the research, and these are physical appearance influences. So this is who influenced them in the first place. So many of them were their mothers, their aunties, their neighbor who was also their teacher. So they would see them, every day getting dressed up for work. And so that was their initial influence. Others were at work for the first time and they were able to see their supervisors who dressed a certain way. Others were, they saw it on TV and that's how they were influenced on, this is what I should wear to work. There was only one person who mentioned getting that influence from a college career center experience where they learned about how to dress for work in a college career setting. The next one is conforming pressures related to physical appearance. And so it's really just the pressures to feel they should dress a certain way. So there was a lot of conversation about that. So this goes a little bit beyond the influence, where it wasn't necessarily they felt they wanted to show up the first time, but the actual feeling that they had to. For example, I should probably wear a blazer for a meeting with the president. So there's that pressure of, if I don't, then I will be looked at a certain type of way. Always overdress was one that pretty much most of the participants mentioned, and it was talking about feeling that they had to always be dressed more than everybody else in the room, that they didn't have that luxury to wear jeans or be casual because of the color of their skin, knowing that there were stereotypes that were attached to being a Black woman, that they wanted to not fit into that or be seen as that. Guidance from supervisors was another one that came up, where the supervisor would say, hey, you're wearing too much makeup, or actually, no, you should wear makeup. One participant said, you're wearing dolphin shorts, which are a little bit too short to wear. You're not a student anymore. And so that's something that came in, and these came from different people. So it will be a Black male, it might be a Black woman. One participant had a woman who's a white woman supervisor who told her about dressing for the job you want. She was the one that mentioned like always having a blazer behind your door because you never know who's going to come in, to see her. She's a dean of students or assistant dean of students, so she was always meeting with students, constituents, people from the community. And so she always wanted to be sure that she dressed a certain way. Intersectionality, of course, because being Black and being woman. And so there were times during the interviews where they were like, well, I don't know if it's because I'm Black, or I don't know if it's because I'm a woman, but here's how I present, or here's how I, why I feel this way. So that came up. The impression management piece here is, I know that I'm going to a certain event. I need to adjust how I'm showing up so that I can be seen a certain way. Then there is the mindset of physical appearance at the senior level. So this one here was really interesting to see. These are the women who said, you know, at the entry level, I was more concerned about not wearing certain things or not wearing bold colors or not wearing all my natural hairstyle. But now I'm at the senior level, I can really do what I want. It's more of, I have the seat, so it doesn't matter anymore. But then there were others who were like, well, wait a minute, actually, I have the seat, so now I should probably pay more attention to what I'm wearing. And so it was kind of, it was not one thing or the other. There were both of those points of views. And then serve as a role model for Black women. This one came up a lot too, where there was this like tug and pull of, should I dress more authentically and wear my graphic tee and rock my natural hair and tie, you know, a scarf around it. Maybe it doesn't feel so good at work, but I know that there are other Black women who are entering the industry and they're coming in as entry-level professionals, mid-level, or even the students that they see. There were some of the participants who mentioned that there were students who were so excited, like, oh my gosh, we have a sister who's in this role and she's rocking her natural hair and she's, you know, showing up as herself. So that means I can do it too. And then the last one here is the role of physical appearance on the career advancement. There were some conversations about feeling that though there was nothing that that could prove that they advanced because of their physical appearance, they know that how they showed up for work every day did not hinder them from advancing. So that was a common theme as well. So I was able to group all those 9 together, and I came down to these 4 core areas. So intersectionality, impression management, coping strategies was added after my defense, and influences and conforming pressures. The coping strategies is very similar to impression management. It really just focused on feeling the need to show up a certain way as a way not to face or deal with some of those feelings around appearance. And so, for example, it was more about, well, this is like a uniform. This is part of my job description now. So that's a way they were able to cope with having to dress a certain way for work, that it wasn't really a personal decision, but it's more of, it's part of my job description to dress this way. Okay. So recommendations for institutions, the leaders who were in the roles making decisions about who's coming in. So hiring managers, you know, HR departments, really anyone that is in those roles or that are in those roles. Most of the women in the study did not see a job description. I'm sorry, a dress code similar to me. I did not see any kind of dress code standards in any of my roles that I can recall. Maybe only one of them said that she did see a dress code standard. So, so if there is a school that does have it, just to really take a look at them and assess, is this necessary? You know, why are these standards in place in the first place? Most of the time, dress codes make sense, or if it's a position where in healthcare, right? And you want to use it for safety and making sure that you don't have, you know, long sleeves, or if you're in food industry and having your hair to be enter the food and they have cover-ups, right? But for most industries, it's not needed. And so just to really address that. The unwritten, I should have put that in here, unwritten appearance standards, right? That was something that came up a lot, where it's not written anywhere, but how do we begin to have conversations around these appearance standards, perhaps when people are being hired, perhaps in professional development sessions where these conversations can take place. So that way it's not a question of what should I wear to work, what shouldn't I wear, but how can we have a conversation about personal identities, choice, and things like that. Job descriptions, things like, you know, bias in the language might be written in there that could perhaps give someone the feeling that they can't show up a certain way. So there's some things that can be done, but more just being more open about it in the conversations. Require mandatory bias trainings. So things related to the Civil Rights Act of 1964. And this is where there are certain things that are not legal because of someone's, or they're discriminating against someone based on something like their race, their age, their religion, sexual orientation, things like that. And in some places, physical appearance falls in that, because it is tied to one of those protected classes. So just being sure that everyone is aware that there could be unintentionally discriminating according to this act. And then also the Creating a Respectful and Open World for Natural Hair Act, or the Crown Act, is something that is out right now. So if you don't know about it, I'm going to talk about it in a couple of slides. And so just being aware that in some industries, a lot of people are being discriminated against based on their natural hair in the workplace. And so being sure that your institution is not doing that, either directly or indirectly. And then create opportunities for women to be mentored or experience mentor moments. This is something that came up in my research, that a lot of the women just were not sure of what to wear, or they were not guided. And so it was only through those mentoring moments, whether it's through their mothers, their neighbors, their supervisors, that they were able to understand the culture of that organization, whether it's something we want to go with or not. But that's kind of the starting point to then decide how they wanted to show up in their careers. And so just finding the right people who can mentor you. And these can be from Black women. They don't necessarily have to be. It's always helpful to have variety of perspectives, but especially from other Black women who may or may not work at their institution. So hosting events, having mentoring programs. And so I know for me, in my personal experience, my work experience, sometimes actual mentors can be hard to find, but the mentoring moments are the ones that are shorter snippets of time, and that can help someone really change their life overall. But when it comes to appearance, that's there as well. Leadership should encourage authenticity and freedom of personal expression in the workplace, promote and hire Black women for senior leadership roles. So the first part of this is to really promote and encourage personal expression. I work in a career center at National Louis University, and I love that everyone here is free to show up as we want. When I first came in, I wouldn't say I was surprised, but I was surprised because when I was in school, we think of career centers, everyone's supposed to be wearing, suits and button ups and, not tights, stockings. And so we're not like that. And I love that we're able to be an example for our students. We know that everyone has their own style. We all can show up in the way that makes sense for us. And that's something that we should see leadership do, because that trickles down to let people know that it's okay to have that freedom of personal expression. Also, too, there is this part about not seeing anybody else in those roles. So being the first Black woman, or being the, one of the few or the only, within their departments or at their institutions. So it's really important for organizations to make it a priority to really consider hiring more Black women, and to consider them for promotions in senior leadership roles, because that only can help others who see them. Again, just like my participants were saying, you have the younger students, you have the newer employees that are Black women who are seeing that, and that they are that model for them to know it's okay that I can show up the way that I want to. Okay. So a lot of these are very similar for the recommendations for Black women. I know I kind of breezed through that, so I'll go into more detail here. And so the 3 recommendations that came out of this research, and I'm sure that there's more, and I would love to hear from you if you have ideas that come up as I go through these 3 areas. You can put them in the chat, and we can discuss at the end of the presentation. The first one is seek out mentoring moments. Second one is dress for success on your own terms. And then the third is to advocate for natural hair acceptance. Seek out mentoring moments. So a mentoring moment is a brief but meaningful interaction between a mentor and a mentee. It can be as short as a few minutes, but it can also have a lasting impact on the mentee's career. And so again, I mentioned that sometimes people have a hard time finding that one solid mentor they can keep with them in their career for a really long time. And that's not always the case for most people or some people. And so just thinking about the individual moments with somebody that can be really meaningful for you is something that I highly recommend. So here's a quote from Dr. Jackie, who is a president of a university. And if I got to mention earlier too, the majority of the participants are in the United States in the Midwest. They worked at variety types of institutions, predominantly white institutions. We had a couple from minority serving institutions in the study as well. So from Dr. Jackie as a president, you're not a student anymore. You're a professional. As you think about putting your outfit together for the summer, you probably don't want to wear dolphin shorts and that kind of thing. So I think that probably for me is when I knew I needed to switch things up a bit. And this is Dr. Jackie speaking about her supervisor who was a Black male. She was speaking about a time when she had just transitioned out of being a student. If my memory serves me correct, I think it was graduate school. And so dolphin shorts are these short, really short shorts that have like a lining that goes around that has like a different color than the main body of the shorts. And so maybe she thought it was okay to wear. It was a summer orientation, so it was more casual, but that particular moment was something that stuck with her even now, many years well into her career. So, I doubled this slide. Okay, so how to seek out mentoring or how to seek out and identify mentoring moments. One of the ways to do that easily is to observe and learn who are the people that you admire. You really admire their style for whatever reason, how they present themselves, how they show up. Take that time. So even if they don't even know who you are, but that observation and learning from them is a mentoring moment because they are modeling the way for you. Share your career goals and aspirations. So when you are talking to your coworkers, supervisors, you're at networking events or any event where you are networking with individuals in the industry, share your career goals and talk about your aspirations because that's going to let you really tap into, what they're doing. They might have referrals for you. This is how you can meet new people who might be at certain levels where you want. And then you can begin to ask questions. So for example, here, reaching out to people that you admire and asking a particular question on appearance. So I might just say, someone who I work with it could be my director, it can be my director supervisor and say, I'm just curious, what is it like at your level? I notice everyone's always wearing suits to meetings. What's that about? Right. And that can just be a casual conversation and see where that takes you. And so don't be afraid to reach out and ask a very specific question on that. I was in a meeting once with the board of trustees and or a leadership team. I can't remember which one it was at an institution. And there were mostly men in the room. And all the men were talking about how, why do we even wear ties? Like this is, around the time, like it was like summertime, excuse me. And they like all took off their ties. And so I'm always around women in our conversations around appearance. So it was really fascinating to me to be in the room to ask, the men and find out like, well, why do you all wear ties? Is that something that's required? And so those are the kind of things that you can ask about in conversations. Okay. Ask for feedback. One of the participants, she has 3 or 4 really good friends who were much older than her, who were more seasoned in their careers. And so she would always ask, let's say she was doing a presentation and they were Black women as well. And she would say, I'm doing this presentation, what do you think about this suit? Or what do you think about this? Is it right for the stage? And so just to say, you can do that with peers, you can do that with your colleagues, really anyone who you admire and you would like their feedback. And then just weaving this topic into conversations that you have with colleagues. I had a conversation about my hair today with a coworker. And so that's what I do now. I mean, it's part of my work, so I can't help myself. But for you, if it's not something that you normally talk about, how can you begin to weave this topic into the conversations that you already have? Because the more you talk about it, the more you're learning from others, the more, you can trust your own judgment about what you're wearing and say, well, I don't particularly agree with you, but this is what I want to do. But it's just nice to have some insight from what others are doing and how others think about how they present themselves in the workplace. Okay. When the job market is competitive and the candidate has similar education and work experience, factors like physical appearance can influence hiring decisions of managers. And so this is was written in 2020. And this takes me back to that experience I had with a colleague who said, one of the reasons why they didn't hire that person who had been serving as an interim director was because this person did not have the look of a director. And so this also came up when I was in my doctoral program back in 2013, 2015. I was in class and we had to do a presentation or like a project on interviewing university presidents. And one of the university presidents that my peer had interviewed mentioned that she is a living logo for the organization. So at this point, at the president level, most of them, they already have all the experience, they have all the degrees they need to be a university president. But what are they looking for? The hiring committee, what are they looking for this president is, in addition to solving certain problems and meeting certain goals, is can you be the face of our institution? You're going to go out there and be meeting with people. You're going to be, meeting with donors. You're going to be doing public relations types of things, being out there in the media and promoting the organization or the institution. And so being the face is something that is a real thing, and not just for the president level, but at many different levels in the career. Okay, so dress for success on your own terms is the next one. And dressing for success while remaining authentic is about striking a balance between professional presentation and personal style. And this was really tricky for a lot of the participants, is really trying to see like how much of myself can I truly showcase versus, dressing for the job I want and not the one I have. And that came up a lot. There was always like, well, dress for the job you want. And so being authentic doesn't mean that you can't dress up. It doesn't mean that you can't wear a suit. It doesn't mean that you can't wear makeup. It really just depends on how do you tie in, who you are with what the expectations are of being in a senior leadership type of role. And so here is a quote from Dr. Takia, who is an interim president. She says, "Be true to yourself. If being yourself means that you like to wear cargo pants and sneakers and that's written in the dress code, then do it. If being yourself, however, means that you want to wear the heels and the dresses and the makeup, do it. But I would say whatever you do, just be mindful of how it's being received and act accordingly." And so this is something that was important to note here, is that everyone who I spoke to, they all agreed that it's so necessary and important to be yourself, but it doesn't mean that others won't perceive you differently or negatively or however, they would. So just as long as you are aware of that, aware of any potential consequences or any potential stereotypes that might go with it, that it's okay to be you and do, dress how you want to dress or show up how you want to show up. And then Crystal, on the other hand, who's an assistant dean of students, she said, "I know I have to look professional and play the part. I also want to be comfortable. So you're not going to see me in anybody's dress or skirt coming into the office because that's what someone would prefer me in." And so she's never in a skirt or a dress. I think maybe once she mentioned an event where she did wear that. She's not into makeup, but she does say that she looks put together. So essentially being polished in whatever style you have is what's important versus the actual style itself. So how can you dress for success on your own terms? One thing to do is to adopt a strategic approach to presenting yourself at work. Be intentional about how you show up. If you haven't been intentional in the past, now is the time to do that. So whatever it is you wear or how you show up, that's just to make sure that it's something that you are really being mindful about and being aware of how others will perceive you. Seek out opportunities to learn about and enhance your executive presence before entering senior level roles. This is one thing that came up from a few people in the study when I asked them a question about, like, where do they learn about how to present themselves for leadership roles? And many of them said that it wasn't until they were actually in the senior level role that they learned how to dress or what they should be wearing. Executive presence really focuses more than just what you're wearing, but it's also on how you behave, it's how you communicate, and so a lot of that can encompass who you are as a leader. And so I recommend that you start that now. So if you're not at the senior level, maybe you're entry or mid, that you want to start thinking about executive presence now, because if you're wanting to transition, that's something that will come up later at those levels. And then begin building your personal brand. So it's sort of related. Your personal brand is really what people say about you when you're not in the room. I always tell people, like, if I'm on a Zoom with you right now, I can log off and you can talk amongst yourself. And I'm sure you will have a good 5 things to say in the comment in the chat box that are pretty similar about who you believe I am based on how I've showed up today. So I'm already showcasing my brand just by being here today, how I'm talking, how I'm presenting, what I'm wearing, my glasses, my hair, whatever the case may be, you will have something to say about that. So already have that brand, but how can you be intentional about developing it further so that you can be proud of how you show up, regardless of what you wear or showcase in your life and at work. Okay, so how to dress for success on your own terms continued is to advocate for change in your workplace by supporting policies and initiatives that promote diversity and inclusion. So physical appearance is going to be part of that. And so, be the change that you want to see and start pushing those initiatives in the workplace. And then redefine what it means to be professional. I believe it was last year, maybe the year before, we're seeing it on LinkedIn. Gabrielle Union and a few other people were really pushing this campaign about I am professional and just redefining what that means. And so wearing natural hair, maybe wearing bolder colors, certain types of prints, things like that. And that's okay because we don't have to fit into the mold that was, taught to us or shown to us in the media back in the day. So if you want to wear sneakers with your, business casual, with your blazer, go for it. If you want to wear a lot of makeup and that's your style, like I know for me, I'm always in the full face when I come to work because I just love makeup and I love to wear color. I also love to wear big earrings. I'm wearing my smaller earrings today, probably because I couldn't find the bigger ones, but I'm always in big earrings. I love color. I'm always wearing purple. If I'm not wearing purple, I'm wearing floral print. So I love flowers. So that's part of my brand. If you're really into bold colors, if you like African print, Ankara print, that's your style, wear it and own it. If you're really big at wearing all the cool glasses, I wear the same frames all year. But if you're the kind of person that wants to have different frames every week and then be known for that, like that's part of your brand and that's okay. If you're really into wearing polka dots and you like, a certain color, then let that be part of your brand. And so that way it's you own it, no one can take it away from you, and you are strategic about how you're showing up, that things aren't happening by chance for you. So again, redefine what it means to be professional. Okay. And then last but not least is going to be advocate for natural hair acceptance. I have a picture here of the former First Lady, Michelle Obama. And when she wore her braids, everyone was like, whoa, what is this about? We love it. Like, but we didn't see this when you were in office. And she said that, the reason why was because she didn't feel America was ready. And I remember mentioning this to one of the presidents in my study. And she said, you know what? She told me almost the same story, but she hadn't heard about former First Ladies, wearing braids that had just come out when I did the interviews. And so she said, for her, she can wear any hairstyle under the sun, but she had not yet worn braids because she didn't think that her institution was ready for braids. And so to hear her say that, and then immediately I was like, oh yeah, did you see the news stories about former First Lady wearing her braids? So it's something that's deep rooted for me. I'm sure for many other Black women about being more accepting of our natural hair. I mentioned earlier, I'm always wearing extensions or something else covering my natural hair. And so while I will always do that for protective hairstyle reasons, I also want to be able to come out and rock my natural hair just because, right? Why not? I love it. It's thick and full. It fits me. It's great. So I'm the kind of person, part of my brand is I like to change my hairstyle, but I want to be sure that I'm beginning to include my natural hair as part of those, hairstyle rotations. So how to advocate for natural hair acceptance. I mentioned the Crown Act before. So for you, the Crown Act is really to end hair discrimination against Black girls and women, so girls in schools and Black women in schools and as well as the workplaces. And this is not just natural hair, but protective hairstyles as well. So you can think of things like crochet hair, braids. Locks are also in the mix in terms of natural hair. It was founded by Adjoa B. Asamoah. And you can go to thecrownact.com and take a look, learn more if you're not familiar with it. It's part of something that I want to do now is to help spread that message because it's important for me and it's important for Black women in the workplace to be ourselves and not feel like we have to hide in order to get a job or to be promoted. And so the more of us that are doing it, the more of us that are advocating it for it, the more that we will see change begin to happen. So I highly encourage you if you feel called to go ahead and sign the petition on their website, contact your state senator. This is a great way to start it. Another way to do so is to really advocate or encourage everyone you know to actively participate. So if you have a friend who's like, "Oh, I'm still doing hair relaxers," and for whatever reason, no judgment, right? But if you want, and they're thinking about going natural, then encourage them. Hey, just do it. It's okay to do it, right? So go ahead and push it. Encourage folks to also sign the petition and contact their senators if their state has not already passed the law. Okay, on social media is a great place to do it. If you are on your Facebook or Instagram and you're always going out and you're rocking your hair, rocking your natural hair, your protective hairstyles, just at the bottom, go ahead and use that hashtag Pass the Crown or hashtag Crown Act. That way that people can click on it and see more and learn more, right? Again, I don't always rock my natural hair, but when I do, I want to make sure that I put that on there and make a quick note or just at least there to kind of mention that this is something that is happening in our country. So last thing, I said it already, but I'll say it again, wear and embrace your natural hair, even if it's uncomfortable. So I always like to tie my hair back. I don't like it just to sit out like this. I prefer long length. That's just a preference. Where that comes from, that's a whole different story, right? And so I'm not comfortable with shorter hair. So if I do have it out, it's usually in a low bun in the back versus down like this. And so that's my compromise most days is when I just pull it back in a bun. Even with extensions, I'm trying my best now to move more towards natural hair textures. So if I am going to wear it, it's most likely going to be a natural hair texture, more curly. That way it still have the look of natural hair versus it being bone straight, which is nothing wrong with that because I still rock my straight hair sometimes, not always, but even when it's straight, it's always like the kinky, what do they call it? Like Italian yaki or whatever. If you wear extensions, you know what I'm talking about. Okay. And then here's an image I grabbed from the Crown Act website. 23 states have passed the law. We're still waiting on 27 more to pass it fully. So you can take a look and get more information on their sites. We're making progress, which is really good to see. Not there yet, have a lot more to go, but it's nice to see that we're making progress. It sucks that we have to actually have law in place for Black women to not be able to, or to be able to wear our natural hair, but this is where we're at. Okay, here's a quote from Dr. Janae. I also recognize too, because I'm in a leadership position, I do have students who are looking to me for example. I don't disregard the fact that I have that influence. So I want to be the example of what professionalism could look like or how you can find your style and it still look appealing. So that was something that, it was nice to hear. Even if you're uncomfortable, think about the people that who are watching you at your level. I know for a fact, like I have a level of influence in the work that I do now. My presence with She Leads Beautifully on social media, my presence as an employee that works in the Career Bridge office, and we have students of color here. Black women students. And so it's important for people to see that because I didn't see a lot of that when I was a student or when I was working, right? So things are changing now. And so sometimes we have to be the one to step out and be the face for others to follow and feel reassured that they can do it too. Okay. So just to reiterate, these are the recommendations that I have for Black women at the entry level or mid-level looking to advance. So seeking out mentoring moments, dress for success on your own terms, and then advocate for natural hair acceptance. And my one question for you before I close is, what action will you take today to help improve, not improve, but to really just elevate your brand in the workplace, to show up as your true, authentic self, to help make change in our society about what it means to be a professional in the workplace in higher education. It takes each of us, each of you in your own roles to make that change for yourself and for others. So what will that action be? Okay, so you don't have to answer that to me now. If you want to, go ahead and put that in the chat, but it's definitely a reflection question for you to take home with you. And then if you would love to stay in touch with me, get connected with me, easiest way to find me is on LinkedIn. You can scan this if you're on your laptop and have your phone. You can scan the QR code and get directly to my LinkedIn profile. My personal site, sheisuzoma.com. Didn't put my other site here, but you can also check at sheleadsbeautifully.com. That is sheleadsbeautifully.com. You can email me here at uzoma9@gmail.com. And then again, LinkedIn is the IN/Dr. Uzoma. So thank you so much. And I know we have a few more minutes. So if you have questions, I'll be glad to answer. Or if you have thoughts about your own experiences, please share. Thank you.
Thank you. That was absolutely incredible, incredible. And I really love how practical you are in providing recommendations that are really individually based, because it isn't a one size fits all. And I really appreciate that. I think there are probably a few questions that are coming up. I actually do have a question. When it comes to Black women wearing their natural hairstyles, as another female, I do like to compliment females when I think they're looking great. Is it appropriate to point out if somebody is wearing their natural hairstyle and saying that it looks good, or is that potentially something that could be considered maybe inappropriate for the workplace? Oh, you're on mute. Oh, Uzoma, I think you're still on mute.
Thank you. I forgot to put it back on. Great question, Melissa. It's definitely hard to answer that. I mean, it's the obvious question, or the obvious response is, of course, it depends on the person. But for me, and maybe because I'm so open about it, I love that question. I love talking about my hair. I love talking about hair in general. But there are some people that I do know that will feel a certain kind of way when that question comes up, particularly when there are things when the hair is looked at as like an object of just, it's like, oh, look at your hair, it's, so fluffy or whatever, versus like genuinely wanting to know or be curious. And so there's some ways that people ask it that are not genuinely, wanting to know. And I think it just depends on your intentions for asking that question. And I think the other person can receive that and say, okay, I trust where you're going with this. I'll be happy to share. So just be mindful of like, what is your intention for wanting to know, or ask that question. Otherwise, just say your hair looks nice and leave it at that. Anyone else? The worst one that I have gotten before is, whenever I straighten my hair, because with my type, if you're familiar with 4A, 4C, like I think I have 4C, which is the curliest, the kinkiest of curls. If you stretch this out, my hair, well, you can't see it with the background. I mean, it's really long. It's down the lower, early, what do you call it? Higher part of my back was stretched out. So it looks a lot different than what it is when it's in this shrunken state. And people will say, oh, well, oh, I love your hair, better when it's straight. Well, nobody asked you. Keep that to yourself, because those kind of responses can be really offensive. And again, it's like, what are you saying, that natural hair isn't beautiful, right? And so these are the kind of things that you have to be careful for. And for me, there's things that I've had to hold on to. One, being a darker skinned Black woman, having natural hair, it was always about, straighten your edges and make sure everything is slicked back. It's like, well, I don't want to do all that. My hair doesn't do that. And I want it to be the way it is. But for whatever reason, it's not seen as beautiful, in certain spaces. And we're trying to change that. And I'm trying to change that. I have a daughter now. She's 3. And so I stopped relaxing my hair back in 2012, before I was married, before I had a daughter. And I knew that at some point, if I was to have one, I wanted to learn how to be more comfortable, to embrace my own natural hair, so that when I finally have a child, and it's just a daughter, which it happened to be a daughter, that I can be proud of my own hair. And so we're not fully there yet. We're working on it. But she sees it, and she's like, Mommy, I like your hair. And I'm like, yes, I like yours too. They're beautiful.
Perfect response. Portia.
I just want to say thank you. Thank
You're
you.
welcome.
Thank you. If any of you all are wondering, like, oh, I don't know if this is really happening, you can look to the left and right and see a person of color and know we have gone through all of this that she presented. My other comment is if you do ask those questions and you genuinely want to know about our hair, just collect those and keep it in your Rolodex. Because if I come in and I had short hair one day and the next day I have long, you know good and well what happened. Like, this is not my hair. So why do I have to keep explaining? This isn't my hair this week, so that's just my only little comment. But I could
love
talk
that.
about this subject all day.
I'm all for it. Hey, let's connect afterwards. Let's chat. And this is for all of you. I would love to continue the conversation, but thank you, Portia. But it's true. I mean, back when I was younger, we didn't have a lot of information the way we do now. The whole thing, like Google is your friend, YouTube is your friend. There's a lot of information about hair, Black hair, natural hair on YouTube. And so if you're curious and you feel uncomfortable asking, if you know somebody really well, and you feel like you can ask, then go ahead and do that. But if you don't and you're genuinely curious, just go to Google and go to YouTube, do a search and look into like natural hairstyles, Black women hairstyle. There's a whole thing about curl patterns, which I don't fully get with, but for those who need to, for whatever reason, again, I mentioned like the levels of like, I think it starts with 1 for straight hair, then 2, 3, 4 that gets, wavy and then into curly. And so my texture would be considered 4C, which is the kinkiest of curly textures on the what do you call it, scale. And so you will see a lot of information about that if you do a search.
Great. Kristen.
Yeah, hi everybody. Let me lower my hand. So I had a comment and a question in the beginning when you were mentioning how challenging it was to interview presidents. My first reaction was, oh, they're going to say because there aren't any, but you said it's because you couldn't get on their schedule. So I was very happily surprised that that was the concern and not my assumption that there needs to be more people of color in senior leadership positions. My question is, if you in your research were curious or stumbled upon, is this a particular element of the Black community, or do you think there is also more need to have this conversation with other groups of color, and how can one go about? And just what were your thoughts on that in your research, actually?
Yeah, no, this is an awesome. I mean, they're all awesome questions, but this is an awesome question, Kristen. When I first started my topic, I wanted to, focus on women as a whole. But my chair is like, that's going to be like 5 dissertations because you have to cover so many different things, right? In different, scenarios. So there's definitely room for further research that can focus on women of, different types of backgrounds and ethnicities, and races that this could apply to. I've mentioned hair a lot in this presentation because that's what came up the most for the participants that I've met with. But you might find others who might speak more on weight or on clothing style or even like facial appearance or makeup. But hair was the one that was most prevalent for the woman that I interviewed. So absolutely, there is room for this conversation to expand. So I'm glad that you are here for this one, but I encourage, if you want to continue the conversation in a different way and bring up this topic in your organizations, maybe in a professional development session, I think it's definitely relevant. But for me, again, just knowing the intersection of, race and gender, for Black women in particular, this is something that's, a high priority because it's an area that there's a lot of discrimination for Black women in these roles. So I wanted to highlight this group for my dissertation.
I think we can also bring in age in that. So when you were talking about making sure you're always prepared and what you wear, I have always been a lot younger in a lot of my leadership roles by quite a few years. And oftentimes I'm the only female. And so that also, I think, really puts a lot of pressure on me to make sure that I am prepared to be comfortable in those types of environments. And a lot of that is represented through my clothing and what I choose to wear. And I don't think I've ever dressed down. I really try and avoid it, because I want that persona to come through on that professional side. So it'd be interesting to maybe look at the intersection of being Black, being female, and potentially at a younger age, because I think that would be such such a difficult intersection
I love
to
that.
start out in.
No, you're spot on, Melissa. And if you remember from my defense, I talked about it was a few people, well, one in particular who made the comment that whenever she would get dressed to go to work, she worked at it was a minority serving institution. So being Black wasn't something that was the main thing for her, but it was more about being a woman in the space. I know we're out of time. And so she had to come in and look more respected by the other men. So she would continue to put on more items, a blazer, maybe pull up her hair in a bun or wear a shorter heel to look like somebody's auntie is the word that she said. And so to look older. And so that's something, I mean, I have so much data that, you know, it could be like 10 presentations, but yes, age, I think that would be a really awesome idea for another research study. Thank you.
Well, we're really happy to co-host on this topic today. So we really appreciate your presentation and thank you everybody for joining us. I don't want to break up the conversation, but I know people are falling off. So I also want to be respectful of your time as the presenter. So if you want to continue the conversation, then I think we have the opportunity to do that. But thank you everyone for coming. And if you have to drop off, we definitely understand.
See you all. Have a great rest of your day. Thanks for being here.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
And thank
Bye.
you, Dr. Wendelin, for co-hosting.